Hey everybody, we're back to break down and review episode 2 of X-Men 97. In this episode, we see Magneto reform the X-Men. A woman who is possibly the real Jean Grey shows up, which means they're going into the Madeline Pryor storyline. Storm loses her powers. There's a whole lot going on, and this was an amazing episode. They do make a January 6th reference, because of course they do, but I'm not going to get into that in this video, though I will talk about it at some point. And to quickly mention Morph, as there was a lot of commentary regarding the showrunner's description of Morph as non-binary, he's definitely gay. He has a very gay-sounding voice. It's not just that they changed his voice actor, but besides that and the insurrection part, there's really nothing woke about the series so far. In fact, it's very well written and also faithful to the original series. Now, in the last episode, the X-Men learned that Magneto was named the new leader of the X-Men in the will of Charles Xavier. And so this episode begins with Magneto proving to the X-Men and to the world that he's reformed. He saves humans in a Ferris wheel, he saves the Morlocks, and even uses Xavier's fortune to basically transport them to the island of Genosha. He surrenders to a UN council for trial and even convinces them to make Genosha a UN nation. Now, his actions, being a former mutant terrorist, of course piss off the Friends of Humanity, as well as the US military and the Commission on Superhuman Activities. His actions also continue to worry the X-Men, as they are still unsure as to why Charles Xavier gave Magneto this role. And specifically, Jean Grey worries about the future that her child is going to grow up into. Because in episode 1, she had a vision of an apocalyptic future where there's like thousands of gravestones, likely the gravestones of mutants. Rogue, on the other hand, wants to actually see Magneto reform and for the world to see him as a good guy, and she and Magneto reconnect. Now, this is something from the comics that they're adding to the continuity of the show because it was never seen in the series that they had a romantic relationship at one point. It's something that they had in the comics where I believe Magneto's electromagnetic waves are able to oppose the power siphoning ability of Rogue, which means they're allowed to touch each other. And so they had a romantic relationship in the comics, and now they're saying that they had one off-screen during the events of the original series. During Magneto's trial in front of the UN, the Friends of Humanity stage an insurrection, and the leader, who calls himself Executioner, fires a gun at Storm, though he was aiming for Magneto. And it turns out that the round contains the same type of radiation that the anti-mutant collars have, except that this one seems to have gotten rid of her powers, according to Beast. This leads to Storm leaving the X-Men and the entire team being incredibly sad, as she's been part of the X-Men for years. That's why I think it's important to watch the original series, because if you've only watched these 2 episodes, it's hard to really understand the depth of the relationship that Storm has built with the X-Men. But as the team is lamenting the loss of Storm, they get a knock at the door of the X-Mansion, and a very disheveled-looking Jean Grey appears at the door, which means that they're diving into the Madeline Pryor story from the comics. So who is Madeline Pryor? Well, in Marvel Comics, unlike in the TV series, at least as far as we knew back then, at the end of the Dark Phoenix saga, Jean was thought to have died. Mr. Sinister created a clone of Jean Grey called Madeline Pryor. She met Scott Summers in Alaska when he was temporarily retired from the X-Men. He didn't realize it was a clone of Jean Grey, but obviously she resembled her, so they fell in love. They had a child named Nathan, who would eventually become Cable. But then the real Jean Grey comes back to life, and he leaves her and his child. She becomes a villain, she gains these demonic powers, and the rest is history. Now, in this episode, Jean did give birth to their son, Nathan Charles Summers. But of course, we believed it to be Jean Grey. However, obviously, these events are going to change the continuity of the original animated series forever, as it'll have to explain how, at some point, the original Jean Grey either died or went into a stasis and was replaced by Sinister. I believe there was 1 or 2 points in the series where she quote-unquote died and then came back. But I'm interested to know when Mr. Sinister slipped in the Madeline Pryor. Now, obviously, they changed some things, like Madeline Pryor was never a member of the X-Men. She was never posing as Jean, or she never believed she was Jean. So they're taking liberties with that storyline, but that's because they're overlapping a number of other storylines, like Magneto's reform, the trial of Magneto, possibly the New Mutants, the storyline of Storm losing her powers, There's all kinds of things going on, and from the opening credits, we know that Sinister is going to be a player in this series. So it seems like Sinister is going to be the villain, while Magneto takes the role of the mentor and leader of the X-Men. One Easter egg I want to mention is that the Jean Grey, who is likely Madeline Pryor, references the battle on the blue area of the moon, which I believe took place in season 4. And that was at the end of the Dark Phoenix saga when the Shi'ar wanted to destroy Jean Grey, but they gave the X-Men a chance to fight for her life. And so if this fake Jean Grey remembers that event, then either she's the real Jean Grey and this other Jean is the clone, or it means that Madeline Pryor was the Jean that was living with the X-Men during the Dark Phoenix saga, and somehow she gained the Dark Phoenix power, which also did happen in the comics. She gained a small portion of the Phoenix Force from the dying body of Jean. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, how it definitely harkens back to the Chris Claremont era of storytelling, where there are a number of plots and subplots, which I really appreciate. However, we have to remember that this is a 10-episode season. We know there's going to be a season 2, but I don't know if season 3 is guaranteed yet. So I hope that they have ample time to flesh out these storylines and that they use that time wisely. Because if they play their cards right, this series could be a huge victory for Disney, which is something that they desperately need right now. But that's all I had for this video. If you guys noticed any Easter eggs that I didn't mention, please feel free to put those in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.